The biggest problem we have in drawing flowers such as daisies is that we think of how we drew them when we were 5 or 6 years old, and, well, we keep drawing them that way, with big loopy petals all equally spaced around the centre of the daisy that are all exactly the same shape and look exactly the same. It's just not how flowers or even daisies are. It's helpful to think of flowers such as daisies as like plates that are tilted at all sorts of directions, some tilted towards us, some tilted away from us, all at different angles. And in some of them we actually see the underside more than we see the surface. With the petals, I like to think as there being 3 key elements. There's how the petal actually attaches to the centre of the flower. A lot of petals attach with a much narrower join than the widest width of the petal. They don't just come straight in as if they're all stitched in across their width all the way around. Petals often twist and turn and sometimes crease. So we need to consider that. And then there's the end of the petal. Does it lie flat? Does it loop up? Does it loop under? Does it twist and loop? How does the end of the petal look if it twists from our particular viewing point? Does it actually end up looking more like a point than a curve? Now, shadows are also cast onto petals by the centre of the flower and by other flowers and other parts of the bush. And depending how we want to render our drawing, we need to be aware of these. So I'm using some simple hatching going horizontally across the petals to indicate shade and shadow on them. You'll notice with the centres, I haven't just done a circle, as tempting as that was, but I've used dotted lines to give me a rough outline, which I can adjust slightly if it ends up being a bit too large or a bit too small as I do the petals. A hard circular line will always be there, and it just isn't the form that we see with these little, I think they're stamens, sticking up in the centre. We also want to be aware, as I'm drawing now, of where petals go under behind other petals. So I couldn't draw these petals till I'd drawn at least a bit of the flower that partly is in front of this one. So being aware of this is important. But the good thing about drawing flowers and about drawing petals is they're very forgiven if we don't get them exactly right. As long as the petals we draw are credible petals, they don't particularly need to look exactly as they do in our reference. Though I find that if I try and draw how they look in their reference, so I give each petal attention as an individual object, I never just fill in a petal. If it works out that I can't fit them all in, or I have a bit of a gap, I can just add one, using whatever form, whatever shape, whatever twist I think will fit the gap. The other thing is to make sure that we don't even up all the gaps around our flower. The way the petals twist and turn and hang, even the way they come out of the flower, means for many flowers, and in this case, there are larger gaps between some petals, at least from some viewing points, than other petals. So again, we need to resist the urge of sticking a petal in to fill every gap, or putting them all equally spaced around the centre of the flower. Again, that harks back more to our 5 and 6 year old flowers. So at this point, I've just about finished all the flowers. And now I've got the stems. This is actually a group of flowers that I've picked separately off a large bush. And I've grouped them together such as this. They are the only daisies in our yard that I could find that were actually in flower at the moment as we go into autumn in Australia. So there is this one final flower down the bottom. And part of it is actually in the shadow of the flower above with the particular light source that we have. This is the largest flower that we have, so I'm trying to reflect that in my drawing of the petals. And you see I'm putting the crease marks on the petals as I draw them. I call them crease marks, but they may just, sometimes they are creases, but they may just be growth lines or some other botanical function. And here I go with the last one. I think I actually might have added a petal in there. So now I'm just making sure there are stalks for every head and that the stalks come together in a credible way. And these flowers are really just squeezed up very tightly the way I've used some string to bind these flowers together. So they don't really represent the way the leaves would hang on the bush. But I like them as a bit of contrast towards this lower part of the daisies, and it lets me put some really dark tone behind the petals and accentuate the petals of this lowest flower more. So that was the main reason I put it in. If it had been a nice spray where the flowers were all in their natural position, I would have just left it as it was and drawn it as it was. But because I know these flowers have really just been, if you like, artificially grouped for a bit of tonal contrast, I'm not too fussed with them. In fact, I end up going beyond what's in the reference. I decided that it probably would look better balanced with a little more foliage. So after I do these bits that more strictly represent what's there, I basically create, using the silhouettes and the patterns that I've come to see as I've drawn the other leaves more exactly, to create a few more. With drawings such as this, the silhouettes are incredibly important. The silhouette of the petals particularly, and also the silhouettes of the leaves. So where we have an outline and there's nothing actually behind it, unless what's behind it is a very dark tone, then that shape, that outline gives the brain a lot of quick information, or it confuses the brain quickly as well if it's not clear. But we can really define our shapes well if we draw our silhouettes carefully. So we give particular attention to those. And if you look at my petals, you can see they do have the effect of twisting and turning, and some bending up towards us and some bending away from us. And that top flower, which is totally in silhouette, is the most important one to reflect this. So now I'm just finishing up here with some of these created leaves. Now, of course, this reference will be available on my channel community page. So if you want to have a go at drawing these daisies, then feel free. And now you know why you won't be able to find these lower leaves there, because I've just made them up. So just putting that leaf on. And now I'm just having a quick look around. Are there any bits where I can add a bit more contrast? And I think that's pretty much done. Just a few spots. Again, just adding a few more darks. I think overall I could have made some of these leaves darker still. I could have added more lines to just create perhaps a little more even finish for them. It's a bit all higgledy-piggledy with lines, the leaves, I think. But that's it. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. I hope you found this challenging, interesting, and I hope you give it a go. It's good to revisit something from our childhood drawings as an adult. But look, whatever you draw, however you draw it, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.